Welcome back, everybody, to another one of the CONVOS. Today, joining us is a very special guest, Rozzi. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us.
Thank you so much for having me. So happy to be here.
So you obviously have like new project, new music, a lot of new things that just came out, exciting stuff. And we're definitely going to talk about all that. But before all that, we kind of want to let our audience know a bit about you and kind of your background. Kind of, I guess, first of all, like, how'd you get your start in music?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was like 6 in the first grade talent show, and I was like, oh, that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Like, I just had a moment of clarity that I've never had. I've never had a moment as clear as that ever since, honestly. And then it wasn't until I got my first job when I was 19. I was a background singer for Sergio Mendes, and then I was background singing for Don Henley, and that was my first tours and my first kind of professional experience, which was incredible. And then I got signed for the first time by Adam Levine from Maroon 5. He heard a song that I wrote and signed me. And now I'm signed somewhere else. I'm signed to BMG Records, and we just put out my album, Barry. So there's a lot of stuff that happened in between, but that's the super short version.
So you said you got it at 6, like 6 is kind of when everything kind of clicked for you. So kind of in your household, was music like a big part of your guys' life and everything?
You know, it's funny. My family loves music, like big music lovers, but there were no professional artists in my entire family until me. And my great grandmother, I found out later, was an opera singer, like not professionally. Okay. I think she was like studying to be one. And then she got married. It was a different time. You know, she just got married and had kids.
Yeah.
But my Nana didn't think to tell me that for so many years, which really makes me laugh, because I was like, Nana, I would have loved to know that there was one other singer in the family. Because most of the time I thought, where did this come from? You know? But music was always on. Like, my family was always listening to music. So I grew up hearing it always.
Can you point to like any specific artist, song, or like moment that kind of like drew you to it?
Yeah. So my dad is kind of like, you know, kind of like classic rock vibes. Like, we listen to a lot of The Who, the Beatles, like Nirvana, the White Stripes. I think my brother probably got him into that stuff, but he loved that. Peter Gabriel, I remember we listened to a lot. My mom, she loves this singer, Eva Cassidy, who's one of the most beautiful voices you've ever heard. Somehow I got introduced to the Supremes. That was probably my mom. Fleetwood Mac. And then my mom and I also listened to, like, my mom liked Bjork and like Todd Rundgren and like then like Shania Twain and like all sorts of stuff. Yeah.
Just a ton of different artists, ton of different influences, kind of, you know. I guess when you were growing up, like, who was your favorite artist? Who did you kind of like gravitate to the most?
So there's different phases. Like, when I was a kid, like, I remember Diana Ross. I remember that album, like Upside Down. Like, I just couldn't stop listening to that. And then, Jewel. When I was, even before that, the song I sang in the first grade talent show was a Jewel song. Obsessed with Jewel. Fleetwood Mac was really special for me. Then I discovered Amy Winehouse when I was like 14, and that really changed my life. And then I discovered Lauryn Hill when I was like 18, and that really aggressively changed my life again. So I went through, like, you know, different phases of like different obsessions, I guess I'd say. And then, you know, then I went through like I will always love Beyonce, but I went through like a really specific Beyonce phase after that, you know. It depends on when you ask me, I guess.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, especially like asking people now, like, how they came in or like found out certain artists, because I guess nowadays with streaming and everything, everybody's kind of exposed to like everything at once. Totally. Whereas growing up, you kind of were just whatever's around you or whatever you would like kind of hear and
pass. You like get a CD, like you have like this CD booklet, and I would know. You know what's cool about that is like the songs that I loved most on people's albums, I didn't know if they were like the hits or not. You know, like I didn't know streaming numbers, so like I loved some like weird deep cuts that. You know, the Jewel song I sang is called I'm Sensitive. And it's like it's not one of Jewel's hits, but I didn't know that. It was just my favorite
one. Albums definitely mattered. I feel like a lot more back then, you know, you had to have like that kind of cohesive feeling, and you can kind of pick your favorites and go from there. So you get like the whole B-sides thing, you know, and I don't think you get any of that these days, really.
Yeah, I know.
Sucks, but so how'd you get into like learning how to sing, perfecting your craft, like getting into college and all that? Like, how did that happen?
I had an amazing voice teacher. I've had amazing voice teachers my whole life, but in high school, I had this voice teacher named Amber Morris. She's in the Bay Area. And she just like infused this confidence and like, you know, she continues to just singer after singer. She keeps filling us all with like a fundamental belief that we are capable, which I think is like one of the best things that ever happened for my self-esteem, like as a teenager. And she really just taught me how to be a soul singer, which is what I felt I was in my heart, but I needed some help getting there, I think. And then I got into the popular music school at USC. And I didn't really want to go to college because I just wanted to go be an artist, but I'm really glad I went there for a while because I learned, I mean, I had such a clear vision of, I knew I was an artist, but I had no idea how to be an artist, honestly. Those are different things. And USC was the beginning of a long journey that continues to be a journey up to finding like how to really how to like really study. I study other singers and I mimic their albums note for note and I learn them the best of my ability. And then I'll kind of analyze song lyrics and I'll write down like, you know, the special lines and what works about them and what doesn't. Like I'm pretty like studious in my artistry. And I feel like that's why college actually really worked for me because obviously it's very studious way to learn music. So that was like a big part of my development. But then, you know, the work itself started to teach me, like being a background singer, there's a million specific lessons I could teach you just from singing with Gracia Mendez, Sergio's wife, or singing with Don Henley. And then when I got signed and dropped and signed again, I learned a lot on the go. So it continues. I continue to learn something every day about how to be an artist.
Yeah. I mean, without being too much of an understatement, you've had like a quite wide spanning career so far. For sure. Yeah. So kind of like the start of that, where like you got signed by Adam Levine and to his label, I think 222 Records. Mm-hmm. So how that happened? How was the experience of all that?
He literally heard a song that I wrote with a mutual friend and he wrote me an email being like, I don't have a label, but I'll start one if you'll be on it. And it was like magic. I was at a USC college party and it changed my life. I mean, I wasn't necessarily, I'm not sure I was totally ready for it in all honesty. Like I was very young and very green and I had no idea, in all honesty, really, I didn't really know who I was yet, but it was a quick, like, I learned a lot really fast from that whole experience. Yeah. And it opened a lot of doors for me.
Okay, that's cool. So you were like his first signing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. And you guys were together for like 5 years, 6 years?
4 years. Yeah. Something like that.
Okay. And I guess during that time, like what was probably some of like your greatest lessons and greatest experiences? Cause you also got to like tour with them, with Maroon 5 and like all these other big artists and all these different placements, like kind of, so what was some of your biggest lessons from like that first experience for you?
One thing that I really learned was how to sing for people who don't know you. I really know how to sing for people who like aren't interested, you know, like when you're opening, sometimes people, especially when you're like a young girl opening for Adam Levine, like every woman in the audience like was in love with him and they wouldn't always be like eager to wait through my set. And I really learned to love that challenge. I still do. I love to sing for people who maybe didn't mean to see me or don't care to see me or are prepared to not like me. I really like to win them over. I find that really fun. And I learned how to do that and how to keep up with him. I used to come out on stage and sing with him every night. I did the Christina Aguilera part on Moves Like Jagger every night. And I really learned how to like keep up with he's an amazing performer and I learned how to keep up. I also learned, you know, I'm a songwriter and I have a point of view. And I didn't, that environment didn't really connect me to that point of view. And it didn't really help foster the writer in me. But I kind of learned by it not being there and it not working out, I learned how important that is for me to drive the ship creatively and completely get in touch with my artistic voice first and foremost. Because I wasn't really in that environment. And so I really learned that as a result of that not going as planned.
Okay. Also, you were also like during this period, and I think over your whole career, basically, you've been heavily involved with like TV, film, whether that's doing like soundtracks or like live performances on shows. Like, kind of how's your experience differ when you go into like that realm of things?
Yeah, I mean, I've had so much fun with that stuff. Like, a lot of it is like, I was on the morning show and I sang a Radiohead song. Like, I didn't write that song. I didn't arrange that song. I didn't dress myself. I didn't put the band together. Like, I had no creative input other than my vocal performance, of course. But that's really fun because it's like, usually I have to do everything. And so it was kind of just like a fun experience to go be a part of this amazing show. So that was really, really odd. And of course, I'm so grateful for the exposure. And then I did like Dollface recently, where I played myself, which was cool. Like, I had like a couple lines like as me. Okay. And
so you get some acting credits too.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I really had to stretch for that role to play myself. And then I sang my song, Best Friend Song. And like, that was such an honor that my song could be a part of, another story. Like, I just love that. And that's just a couple of them. My favorite maybe is when I had a cameo on Wet Hot American Summer, the Netflix show. It was like the prequel to the movie that came out years ago. And I had to like diva sing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. And then John Slattery, his character, like chews me out, is so mean and so funny. And that was just like such a cool, weird experience that I got to have. So generally it's just like, it's out of my comfort zone and it's a challenge and it's like really different from what I normally do. And I'm always really happy to do those things. It's really fun.
Do you have any like soundtrack placements that like kind of surprise you or that are like some of your favorites that you've had so far?
I mean, they all surprise me because none of those things, I didn't seek out any of those things, like I'm always trying to get my songs placed and stuff, and nothing I've ever tried to do has actually panned out, but all these really amazing things always found me. Like, Best Friend Song was also in the Netflix movie Me Time that came out earlier this year. And it's like
Kevin Hart, right?
Yeah. It's like the whole opening credits is like a montage of Kevin Hart and Mark Wahlberg being best friends, but it's set to my song, which I wrote about my best friend. So that surprised me. That's so fucking funny to see them being best friends to a song that is very specifically about my friend. That came out of nowhere and was like such an amazing surprise. So
I've always wondered, like, how does that happen? Do you just get like an email saying, hey, we want to use a song, or does it go through like your label and then you find out later on, or like how does that all happen?
Yeah, it went through my label, but it's kind of the same. They just emailed my label. We want to use the song. I had no idea who heard it, who decided. I had no idea. And that's just like the universe being awesome, I guess. And then it just came through, and then it's just like you do the deal, basically. It was really, really fun to have that.
Yeah. You've also done like a lot of collaborations over your career. So kind of what are like the differences between working with all these different artists and just kind of working for yourself, like on a solo song and whatnot?
I mean, I collaborate all the time. Even when it's a solo song, I'm collaborating. I write with people. I co-produce. I have other producers when I don't produce at all. I could not be an artist without collaboration. I completely depend on it. So the only time that I really, there's two places where I like to do things more by myself. And it's like lyrics. I like to write a lot of the lyrics by myself first, or at least get a head start on the lyrics because they're so personal. I just get shy. And so I usually need to kind of work on something by myself before I bring it in to somebody else. And then the vocal choices, like I'm obsessed with singing. And I will say I have worked harder at singing than I have at anything in my life. And I feel pretty good about knowing what's going to work and what isn't. So I've tried working with like vocal producers in the past, and that's the one area I'm like, nah, I got this. I'm going to I'll decide completely by myself how I'm going to sing this and what I need to re-sing. And that's really me. But everything else, and even those two areas, I still do collaborate. I really love I have a lot of creative, brilliant friends, and they just make my art better. I would never want to keep them out of it if they can make it better,
Yeah. You've also worked with some pretty big names from like Kendrick Lamar, Pusha T, obviously, like Adam from obviously Maroon 5, and the Scott Hoyling. You worked with him a couple times too. Like, so kind of what is like your favorite experiences working with some like bigger name artists, and then why not?
Yeah. I would say the ones, I mean, listen, Kendrick is like one of the most important artists of our time. So I am incredibly honored that I got to ever do anything with him. I will say, I don't really feel quite like I earned that. I think that had a lot to do. I was young and I was signed to Adam, and I don't think I had much to do with that at all. I didn't even write that song. That song doesn't really connect with me, to be completely honest. It's from an era where I didn't really know myself. And so Kendrick's my favorite part on that song. And that's no disrespect to, I love my fans who love my old stuff. I love that they love that. It's just, I hadn't quite found myself yet. So that collaboration is complicated for me, to be honest, because I'm such a fan, but it's not really the authentic collaboration that I wish it could have been. And
like the experience that you would have wanted it to be.
Yeah. Versus, working with Scott or Nile Rodgers or PJ Morton, who just did I collaborated with him on this last record. Those are like people that I really artistically connected with, and they wanted to work with me based on my own work and my own name. And that means more to me ultimately. Getting to like FaceTime with Nile Rodgers over quarantine while he did like a raging guitar solo on my song. Like that was a highlight of my life. And PJ, I love PJ I've known PJ for years because of Maroon 5, but I've been such a fan of him always that I didn't really feel like I kind of deserved to share a song with him until recently. And that's means a lot to me. And then Scott's one of my best friends. So he probably would do anything for me, even if he hated my music. I don't know if that counts, but it was an honor to have, he's so brilliant just to have his talent. Like I just feel really grateful to have their talents on my record.
Also, I guess you have, outside of the music, you also have a podcast. It's called Ugh, You're So Good. As we were speaking about Scott, you also have this with him. Mm-hmm. So kind of how did that come about? How that start? When you have like any goals for it, or just kind of honestly, seeing what happens?
I don't know if we'll ever do it again. We have some episodes we never released that we probably should just put out. Scott and I both got so busy, especially him. I mean, he's like the busiest man in America. And we're both like, we did it just for fun. Like truly, it was like, let's hang out and get people that we like to come over and like tell us secrets. Like that was really the fun. So we never really had like, it was always pretty casual, I will say. So it was just for fun. And I think we'll do it when it's easy and when it's fun. And if the minute it starts to feel like it's chore, I think we're both like, pause, and we'll come back to it when we have the time for it.
But if you were to have like one dream guest on podcast, who would that be?
Oh my God, there's so many. I mean, Paul McCartney. We're gonna have a dream guest. Okay. I guess that's one.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. So get back to your music a little bit. Like, what is kind of like your creative process when it comes to songwriting or creating a song, creating a project?
Yeah. I always write my lyrics first, like I was saying, or I usually write my lyrics first. I write really personal songs. The fuel for every melody I'd ever hear and every vibe I would try and create, the fuel is my emotions. Like I write songs and I sing songs because I depend on it for my sanity. It's like literally mental health for me. So it starts from an emotion. And so what I try and do is every morning I wake up and I get a little caffeinated and I do a little meditation, and then I just free write, and I write journal entries, I write poems, I write whatever I can, just so I have like some fuel to go into the studio with somebody else, and I'll read them my little poem, or I'll read them a little something I've written, and then I'll play them a song I'm kind of inspired by, and then we'll just like jam together until it's a song. And then usually I won't come back to it for a while. To record it, I come back later, and the production comes later. I try to focus on the song in the beginning.
Yeah, I'm always curious to see with artists whether they hit the production and then create the song, or they, vice versa. People have like different approaches. Inspire
each other, but for me, it's like the best thing is to work with producers, write with producers who I just trust musically. So even if it's the wrong production, I know they won't like do anything to like mess up the vibe of the song, and then we can really get to the nitty gritty of the production later.
Do you yourself like get involved in the production process? Like, do you do some of your own stuff?
I always hesitate to take credit. And I don't know if that's like imposter syndrome or like, I don't know what that is, but I definitely do. I definitely have like a ton of really specific requirements and opinions and ideas constantly. Some songs more than others, but I definitely do. I guess I just, I'm never the one behind. Actually, I am the one behind the computer sometimes. I record my own vocals sometimes, but usually I'm not. So I don't really think of myself as the producer, because I do work with brilliant producers who produce more than I do. But I do actually. I am really starting to more and more.
Okay. How do you know, like, after you've done a song or record a song that you have something, like you have one? Like, what's that moment for you?
Good question. Honestly, it's like, do I feel like listening to it? If I don't feel like listening to it, it's because the thing is, everything is subjective. So I might write a song that somebody else really likes, but if I don't connect to it in that way, I'm never gonna have, my heart's not gonna be in it. So I kind of just have to base it off of me personally. Do I feel like listening to this thing? Because I only really listen to myself when it's new and I'm trying to decide if it's good, if it's working, what I need to change, and if I don't feel like listening to the demo, it's a pretty bad sign. But if I want to, then I usually think this one should stick around.
So does that have to like kind of cross that threshold before maybe you start showing it to other people, or do you show it to other people and then still kind of like?
I used to show people all the time and now I don't. Now I really protect it because there's nothing worse than writing something and you think it's brilliant and you send it to somebody when you wrote it and then they're like, oh, it's good. It's like devastating. I wait until I'm not so precious about it to show people.
Or you go the other way where it's like something you maybe not necessarily feeling, and then like, oh yeah, this is the one.
And I'm like, what? Yeah, it's confusing.
Okay, so speaking about music creative process, you have a new album out that just came out, Barry. Deluxe. Yes. First of all, congratulations for the release. Kind of how are you feeling about it right now?
Right now I'm feeling it. So I literally, as I was walking in late for our interview, one of the guys from my vinyl company handed me my vinyl. So I have my vinyl for the first time in my life. I've never had a record on vinyl. I've never had a physical album of any kind before. So I just was holding my album for the first time, and that was pretty exciting. I feel really proud of it. I feel like I just worked so insanely hard on it for so long that I kind of can't believe it's finally out. And if I'm being completely honest, it coming out has the biggest thing it's done for me is let me focus on what I'm making next, because it's hard to make something new. Yeah. Even though, it's been finished for a while for me, like it took me a second to I needed it to be done officially.
Yeah.
So that's been a huge gift to have it be out. I've left it to be to its own devices, whoever it belongs to everyone else now. And so now it's let me be like totally freed up to write my new record, which is fun. But I'm so proud of Barry, and it's really awesome to have something out there that I feel like people can find, and I'm really proud of what they're going to hear.
So when did you start the process of creating this album?
Oh my God. I think the oldest song on it I wrote at the end of 2018, I think literally the oldest song on there I wrote at the end of 2018. And then there's the newest song I wrote earlier this year, 2022. So it's been a long time. I've been working on it for a really long time. Yeah. So
I guess, first of all, the title, Barry, is there any like special meaning behind it? How did you pick the title for the album?
Yeah, I stole it from my boyfriend. I literally stole the title. He and his brother are brilliant musicians, and they grew up. Well, they were sometimes in LA growing up at a house on Barry Drive, which is where I spent my quarantine. So it became like kind of sentimental for me. Probably not as sentimental for me as it is for them, because they were children in this house. But I wrote this song, Barry. That's like a love song that I wrote for my boyfriend, because it was just like the place of where our whole relationship started. And they wanted to call their album Barry, and I just was obsessed with it. And then at first I wrote the song and I was like, that's okay. If I write a song called Barry and their album's called Barry, that's okay. And then I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I finally had to be like, you guys, I really want it. Like, can I have it? And they very graciously gave me their album. I mean, like, seriously, to my credit, Barry was one of a few options they were considering, whereas for me, it was like Barry is it. So, but I have no excuse. I stole it from them. It's going to be their album title.
Yeah, I mean, it was just the name of their childhood home, but
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So kind of a lot of this creative process obviously was probably done during like quarantine lockdown, as you mentioned. So kind of what were some of the difficulties that you found like in making this, if there were any?
I mean, it slowed everything down. That's the biggest thing. Like I've been releasing this album slowly over 2 years. And it just like slowed that process down. But in terms of like creatively, it actually was kind of nice. Like it forced my life in a totally different direction, which was really inspiring. I learned how to use Logic, and I recorded some of the vocals on the album. I recorded sitting at my table, like just at home. And I'm proud of myself for that. And I wrote some of these songs during quarantine. The photo shoots and stuff, we were able to kind of squeeze in at windows when things weren't so scary, COVID wise. So that was lucky. And yeah, I feel ultimately so grateful for the way I know quarantine was impossible in a lot of ways for everybody. But if I look at the spectrum of it, I mostly just feel incredibly, incredibly lucky for the timing of it and everything.
Yeah. So are there like any specific themes about this album that are reoccurring?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be curious to see what my listeners would say. I think one theme that's just always a theme for me is vulnerability. Just finding your truth and not being ashamed of it. And if anything, being like empowered by it. So there's a lot of different relationships I talk about on this record. Highs, lows, heartbreak, falling in love. Just kind of runs the gamut. Cause like I said, it was over 4 years of my life. But ultimately it's all really very personal. As much as it might be like inspired different muses, it's all very, very, very personal and kind of a story of like somebody really, I don't know if you believe in astrology, but like your Saturn return is like the end of your 20s. That was really when I was writing a lot of this. So it's kind of just like really reconnecting to myself. And I feel like through this process, I really feel like I'm leaving this process closer to who I was as a kid than ever. Like I feel like I connect to like the roots of me. And I feel like that really came out of writing this album and making this album in a lot of ways. And that's, I don't know if you can hear that on the record, but I certainly do. And it's definitely like led me to where I am now, making what I'm making next.
Yeah. Actually, what I was going to say is kind of what I took away from it was like the vulnerability as you mentioned it. And also like the openness of how you kind of speak about things. And even the song titles, I felt like kind of like, talked about how you were almost like expressing and like letting go of certain things and like almost like a therapy session, which is kind of a theme of music these years.
Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that. So you mentioned working with Nile Rodgers, who is obviously an absolute legend. So kind of how did that come about? You talked about it a little bit, but how did that collaboration come about?
My manager, the amazing Wendy, knows Niall and sent him some of my stuff, and he liked it and said he would be down to collaborate. So he and I there was a different song he was going to do originally, and he did a version of that, and we were talking about that. And then I sent him Consequences, and it just felt like it was made for him. Like it was just like perfect for Niall. And so we just kind of like FaceTimed and emailed and sent stuff back and forth, and it was really effortless. Honestly, he's obviously just so good that it's just pretty easy to get something good with him. And it was really very validating to me to have him believe in my music enough to want to put his name on it. That really means a lot to me.
So kind of what are some of your favorite tracks off the album? Anything that you like find yourself coming back to, or anything that you're like most excited about performing live?
Yeah. God, I never listen to it anymore. Live, I actually really like singing Barry. It's kind of my break in a set because it's the easy. Most of my songs are just really, I don't know why I write myself such hard songs, but they're hard to sing. And Barry is easy. So Barry is like my little break, I guess. But it's also just romantic and intimate. And I really like singing it live. I also like singing Hymn for Tomorrow live because I feel like it's my little dose of optimism that I like to spread to the world. I feel like if I can take any moment to make people feel good about what's coming when there's so much information that makes us feel so bad about what's coming. I like doing that. And then I would say Madman's a pretty big crowd pleaser because I just really get mad on stage and it's fun. And it's like, that also feels like therapy for me. So those come to mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Past Life, I really, really liked. Kind of reminds me of like that 90s or early 2000s like R&B, which was like a huge part of like my growing up. And I love like hearing that kind of come back a little bit.
Thank you.
Also Consequences and I think Flow. I really like Flow too as well.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so glad you like them.
You've had a long career, but you've only had 2 albums really officially. So kind of, was that due to kind of creative differences, creative processes, or like did you just feel like this was the point in time where you're ready to make one?
All of the above. I thought, kind of like I said, I got signed really young. I was really ambitious, but I didn't quite know where to channel that ambition correctly. And so I think, a lot of the early years of my career were, more opportunity than I was ready for and not enough creative development and artistic development. And so I think, as grateful as I am for all those opportunities and the doors that it opened, I had to do a little bit of backtracking and I had to do a fair amount of like self-discovery. And, I've had to do a lot of work to get put in the sentences. Like when people think about me or speak about me, to put me in the sentences where I want to be, and that's no disrespect to any artist because I'm a fan of truly all music. But in terms of just like my authenticity, like, I want to be in the same sentence as PJ or as Niall. I'm a soul singer and I want to be in that community. I made a lot of Barry. I made with George Moore, who's a producer in London, who worked with Yeba. He's worked with a lot of people that I want to be associated with. And I had to do a little bit of, I had to move a little back and forth again to kind of rebuild some of that stuff. So I guess, like, I don't know if that exactly answers your question, but a lot of those early years, I'm glad I did make an album. The stuff that came out is a little, I just feel a little disconnected from it because I didn't write most of it. And I think you can tell which ones I did. If you listen, it's pretty obvious if you listen to my current music. And so there wasn't really an album there to make, basically.
Yeah. That would have been my next question. Kind of you talked about like your evolution musically of where you first kind of started in your career to like now. Like you said, there's a difference. It feels more like a little bit more stripped back, like you said, more authentic and more kind of like vulnerable and open, where some of the songs like with Kendrick can kind of sound like something that you would hear from like a pop artist who wants that traction and whatnot. Yeah. So I guess would that be what you say, like your kind of biggest evolution is kind of finding your sound? Or
even yes, completely. But even the way I'd say it is I wasn't writing those songs back then and now I am. These are coming from me. Whereas those songs back in the day when years ago, I didn't write and I was singing them because I was a teenager and some very powerful men who I wanted to work with told me to, so that's kind of the difference.
Yeah. Well, here you are now. The project sounds amazing. It sounds great. Obviously, how's the reception been? Are you kind of happy where things stand?
Yeah, I feel really good about it. It's been feeling really awesome. I feel like we're growing and I feel like my numbers, it feels so good to see people finding it and hearing it. And thank you for spreading the word even further. It means so much to me.
No problem. I heard the song and I was like, oh, she sounds great vocally. So I'm liking what I'm hearing and definitely want to kind of, see what else you got going on. So speaking about that, you said you're also moving on, thinking about new music. So what do you have like planned for the future? Any goals, tours, like any new announcements coming up soon?
Yeah. So I'm writing a lot. I've been in LA writing all month. I'm going to do that all next month. I'll probably be writing in London sometime early next year because I like to work there too. I do have some shows. I have like a show in San Francisco in February, which is fun because I'm from there. So I'm going home for a noise pop festival. show. I'm doing some other dates, I think in the Midwest, end of January. Like I got stuff here and there. I don't know about a full tour. If one falls in my lap that feels right, yes. But I have to say, I'm very inspired by this album that I'm feeling in my head. And I really just want to go make it and get it out faster than this last one. I don't want to take another 4 years.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So look forward to.
Yeah.
So I guess that kind of made me think of a question. So like songwriting, do you also songwrite for other people? It's kind of like something you do also. Do you also do on the side?
Not on purpose, but I love when it happens. Like I have a song, Daryl Braithwaite, who's like this Australian legend, cut one of my songs a couple of years ago, and we actually went gold in Australia, which was so cool. I've never even been to Australia, but I wrote that song for myself and then I didn't use it. And so he ended up recording it. I have a couple songs like that. I have a song with the Knox and Alex Newell that I wrote that I didn't sing. And I want more of that for sure, but it's not something I'm like actively trying to do. It just kind of has happened.
Well, sometimes it's just meant to happen. All right. Well, thank you, taking time out and talking to us and kind of talking about your life, your career, your album, Barry, out now. Everybody go listen to it. It's great. I mean, I'm a fan now. We're fans now. So we're definitely be checking out anything you have coming out in the future.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. That was really fun. Can't wait to listen, watch clips, everything later.
Yeah. Links for everything. Go follow her. Go run up the streams will be down below wherever you guys are watching this video. So other than that, we'll catch you guys next time.
Amazing. Thank you so much.